It's official. The Mets have clinched a playoff berth for the first time since 2016 with a win over the Milwaukee Brewers on the road last night. As said in a previous video, I made a promise that once the Mets clinch this playoff spot, that we will be giving you a list of players that do not belong on the 2022 postseason roster for the Mets. This is playing out of the guys who are just eligible on the 40-man roster before the September 1st deadline. So here it is, 6 Mets who cannot be on the 2022 postseason roster.
Two, Vader. Swings and misses, strike three. He struck him out. 5 Met pitchers combined for the second no-hitter in New York Mets history.
Now, these 6 players have been decided for many different reasons. Either we don't trust them, either they are not a valuable option to postseason success, or they have just been a full liability all season. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer, we both know that there are guys on this list that'll probably end up on the postseason roster, but we have strong opinions as to why they shouldn't be and how they are more of a net negative than a net positive on this roster.
So you can only go back down to 26, obviously, from September 1st, it's been 28. Mets have a lot of options. You know, you'd say they're very top heavy. They don't have the depth per se of a Braves or a Dodgers. But now we're trying to figure out the guys on the margins that come playoff time we want to see in the playoffs, and some guys who are everyday starters, we want nothing to do with them when it comes down to the postseason.
So let's start this one off with a reminder / PSA. Dominic Smith. We've seen an up and down production from the DH position pretty much the entire season. And as for someone else who is also going to be on this list, the buzz around Mets media has pretty much been the fact that Dominic Smith has been destroying it in AAA recently and that he does deserve another shot. We had an entire other video talking about how the Dom Smith era is officially over and there's no looking back. But since we're on to the postseason and we're moving on to bigger things, I thought that it would only be right to say that the Dom Smith era is over and there is a 99.9% chance that he will not play a single major league game this season or maybe for the Mets ever again.
If you are anyone that is saying, we need to give Dom Smith another chance, there's the door. I want you to go to your house, run yourself a bath, pick up your toaster.
Let's not do that.
Dom Smith's done. Dom Smith is beating up AAA pitcher. Dom Smith should be beating up AAA pitcher. This dude's not a big leaguer. This guy is a minor leaguer, and that's where he's going to be. He's going to get non-tendered by the Mets in the offseason, as he should, and that era is over. Just like J.D. Davis. He is not going to fit here. He might go thrive somewhere else and go be a quality, serviceable first baseman, but that's all he's going to be. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over, thinking a different result. And calling up Dom Smith is just insane at this point. He's not going to succeed here. Get over it. He's a great dude. Dom Smith is not the answer.
I think we've said this a little too many times. Dom Smith was a first-round pick back in 2013. He has not performed to the expectation, and he does not really have a spot on this roster. I'm comfortable knowing that Guillorme can play first base over this guy because I don't need this guy's bat in the lineup. He has uncompetitive at-bats. He lost a huge chunk of his power. He may be a likable guy, but that's all he's got going for him in this Mets organization. The era is over.
I miss Fat Dom.
I miss Fat Dom too. Fat Dom was a vibe. Speaking of another bat that is useless, Darren Ross. This guy has shown absolutely nothing. We have ranted enough on this guy so far, and we're just going to keep it short here. 36 years old, past his prime. You gave up 4 assets for him. It has not worked out. We have an entire video of talking about if that trade was a mistake just 1 month later. So you understand our current stance on Darren Ross. He doesn't fit into the mold like we expected him to. He's not killing left-handed pitching, and he's just pretty much created a hole on the roster for the short time that he's been here.
So he was supposed to be valuable, and he has been atrocious to levels of, we want this guy on the first trip to Korea. He can go back to Japan and go play in the Vietnamese baseball like he did before. Even though he will probably end up being on the roster. Again, this video we're not predicting that. Video is coming soon. Hopefully, if it's a mutual option, the Mets can decline that and he can go play shuffleball with Frank at the old retirement home and we'll never see him again.
We're even seeing Buck Showalter lose a little bit of faith in Darren Ross. He hasn't really been in the lineup when they're facing a lefty recently. We've seen him go to Mark Vientos over him to face a lefty off the bench. So it's very possible that they are trying to move on from him in this short period of time where he's done absolutely nothing. And even though he has that postseason experience and he most likely will end up on the roster, considering how much you gave up for him, he's not really providing anything in the lineup or off the bench. In fact, he's making the bench look even worse. Third player on this list, you knew that he would be here, Taiwan Walker. Yet again, I think the Mets have a little bit more trust in Taiwan Walker than the two of us do. But like we said in previous videos, don't collapse in the second half and then we'll give you credit. He has not looked good in the second half, even though he's been fine his last few outings. I'm taking it with a grain of salt with the strength of an opponent. I just don't think that this guy is actually serious. Now, stuff and talent aside, the excuses that he always makes for why he pitched bad is ridiculous. I'm sure that he's banged up. He has a huge injury history. But like I've said before, don't be stupid. If you're not healthy going into your start, don't pitch. And I am not going to deal with that drama in the postseason when every game is a must-win game.
He will dominate in the first half when he has no innings on his arm. And then once he gets a little bit of, innings on his arm, he's going to come up with, oh, it's a blister. Oh, my bunion hurts. Oh, my appendix hurts. I had to take my appendix out the other day. This guy will always find a way to make an excuse when he has a bad start. Usually he will dominate the Nationals and the Marlins. The Marlins he loves to dominate. But then you have games against the Pirates and Pittsburgh where he's getting absolutely barreled like it's nothing. Once you get to the postseason, you're not facing the Marlins. You're facing the best teams in baseball. And do you trust this guy to get 5 innings without putting you out of the game? What kind of balls is Manfred going to allow? Are we going to see the juice ball where, if Taiwan Walker gives up, a fly ball that you think is an easy fly ball to left field and it's in the second deck of the promenade level? I want to see Taiwan Walker in the postseason. Obviously, you have your 4 with the big 3 and Carrasco. If you had to use a fifth starter, I would go to Trevor Williams before I'm going to Taiwan Walker.
I think it's pretty much been explained, and nobody really talks about this that much. There's a reason why he's been passed around from Seattle and Arizona, Toronto, and teams like that, because they just have not found any consistency with this guy. If we can't see a good season from him, I don't think you can see a good postseason from him. He's just a very vulnerable pitcher that got a lot of hype after the Mets missed out on that guy whose name will be redacted for having good numbers, but just never executing a full, healthy, full-on season, which makes him extremely unreliable.
It's also great that he set up his second career choice, that taco truck. Get ready to use it in about 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I love tacos. Tacos are really good.
Quesadilla kind of guy. I'm not really a big taco guy.
I'm fine with either. It's fine.
I just made a pulled pork quesadilla today. Shit, clap.
Next up, we have David Peterson. I know a lot of people are going to come after me for this one, but you have to hear me out. One thing that I cannot stand with this guy, we all know, is the walks. But overall, the consistency is not there. We have seen it throughout the entire season. 3 great starts. 2 great starts, 4 bad outings, 5 bad outings, 6 bad outings, 7 good starts. I cannot trust this guy to go out 25 times to the mound in a regular season, and I damn as hell am not trusting this guy to go out in the postseason. This guy loses his head way too much, similar to the Steven Matz position, but Steven Matz can actually throw strikes. And it's a situation that you just cannot deal with in must-win games in the playoffs.
He is the most controversial player, it seems, on Mets Twitter, because you have people with spotlights that love him, and then you have us that just are realists and say this guy can't throw strikes consistently. He is not that great. When he's good, you pray that he can keep it going, but majority of the time it goes against the Marlins, the bottom feeders. Against the Chicago Cubs, walks the bases loaded and gives up 2 2-run doubles, and you were down 6-0 in the first inning. He got 1 out. Yes, that's one example, but again, then we're trying to put him in the bullpen. Do you trust David Peterson coming out of the bullpen to throw strikes? I don't. The lefty I like, which still hasn't been able to come back from Tommy John, is Joey Lucchesi, because I trust him to throw strikes. And he actually has one very good pitch in the church. Or with David Peterson, does he have a good pitch? And, people like his slider, but then he can't get it over. Only sometimes he can get whiffs with it. Sometimes nobody's chasing.
I'd say that in a low leverage regular season game, I have really a tough time watching this guy pitch. If you really think that I'm going to be okay in the matter of him coming out of the bullpen in a tight game in the postseason? Absolutely not. Now, listen, every pitcher has their blowups, but when these situations come in bunches, you really cannot trust him to be a consistent piece to this pitching staff, let alone a regular season, and definitely not in the playoffs. He is what I expected him from the beginning of the season when I made this awful Twitter take that he's not a consistent major league starter, and at best, he's in the bullpen. Now, next up on this list, I made a promise that he would be on here if he's still on the roster to this day. Even though the verdict is still out on Joey Lucchesi coming back and replacing him, Joely Rodriguez.
He is the other version of David Peterson that obviously walks too many guys. Do you trust this guy to come in a big spot and get outs at those strikes? He does give up soft contact. Does he get unlucky? Yeah. He's the only lefty because they didn't want to go out and trade for a bad contract to get Jake Diekman. They didn't want to go out and get Andrew Chafin. They didn't want to go get Joe Mantiply. This was the guy that Billy Epler said, you know what, Joely's the guy we want. We traded him for Miguel Castro. I was happy about that trade at the time. I think both teams lost that trade. They both suck. He's most likely going to be on the roster. He were Epler, Alderson, and Buck. They wouldn't be because I cannot trust this guy to come in, like I've said, with David Peterson, Freeman, Will Smith, especially Max Muncy, to get an out against a left-handed hitter. I'm not guaranteed he can do that. Yes, he's had 2 great outings. How much you want to bet his next one doesn't do well? So again, I would take him off the roster. But again, Joey Lucchesi is not ready.
And this is just going back to points that I made in a previous video. The limitations that you have on Joely Rodriguez for him to succeed are so small where he can full on succeed in the postseason. In my eyes, this guy is just taking up a roster spot. You can get as unlucky and the is batted ball luck known to man. I'm one of the advocates and one of the biggest studiers in batted ball luck. But at the end of the day, if you can't get the ball over the plate, what is the point? Like I've said before, it is 99% possible that Joely was set up to fail this year. But the limitations that he has, and also not being able to throw strikes, is something that you definitely do not want on a postseason roster. They need versatility. They need guys that are available for every situation. And Joey Lucchesi and even some other options that they have in AAA can do that better than Joely Rodriguez. And the 6th and final player that cannot make this postseason roster, even though it is a 90% chance that he will be, is Trevor May. He has been one of the most disappointing signings in the Cohen era. From coming in as a high-profile strikeout pitcher to where his stuff is full-on regressed, his fastball is pretty much unusable at this point, and he's become one of the most predictable relievers in all of baseball. He just cannot be trusted. He's easily the worst arm in that bullpen this year. Last year, he wasn't amazing, but he was serviceable. This year, when he is healthy, he has been not only giving you anxiety like last year, but also being completely untrustable. I'd say that this is probably the biggest waste of $7 million on a bullpen arm that the Mets have ever done. And that says a lot.
The fact that Billy Epler went on MLB Network and said that Trevor May has been good in a New York Met uniform is a joke.
Obviously, May, who has not been great as a Met, maybe that 3 or 4 out scenario in a big game would worry me a little bit. Let me get your thoughts on that. Seth Lugo, let me get your thoughts on that. Go ahead.
Yes, sure. That's fair. Now, I would actually argue with you that Trevor May has been very good as a Met because I can pull up his 2021 season, and that's a pretty darn good season. And so,
guaranteed to give up a homer every outing, it seems like, or minimum a single or a couple of base runners at minimum. When's the last time he had a 1-2-3 in? They're paying this guy $7 million. He's gone in the offseason. The one guy in that bullpen, thank God you're gone. Tyler McGill came back last night. Was it a great relieving outing? No, but if he can be competent, he's taking Trevor May's job in that 7th inning with Lugo and Otto and obviously Diaz 9th. That would give us, second tier trusted high leverage arm, making Trevor Mays in mop-up duty where as a Met he should be. So.
At the end of the day, it's one of those situations where the Mets have to realize that this guy cannot be trusted. They have to cut their losses and realize that this was not a good addition. And if Epler has any say in the postseason roster, he's not an Epler guy. So I don't see a reason why he needs to be on the postseason roster otherwise of that contract. Even though he most likely will be on the postseason roster, we do not trust this guy one bit. Even with that, I'm so excited for the postseason to see this Mets team back there for the first time since 2016, but the job is definitely not finished. We're still going for that division. Atlanta has reigned in first place for too long, and it's time to take them out. But knowing that there is a full-on guarantee that we will be playing October baseball, it's definitely refreshing for the fan base, who has gone through a lot of pain and suffering over the past decade or two, or however long you've been a Mets fan.
You know what the Mets should do? Because when we clinch the division in Atlanta, we should go over to the Chick-fil-A cow they have in right center field and make sure it has a Mets hat on to know that this is our house and we're going to clinch on your field. Take that Chick-fil-A cow that haunts everybody's nightmare.
To be honest, I'm only expecting you to steal that cow and like replace it with the one that you have in your room right now.
I'll take a real size one of these, stick it in my garage. You know, every time I come in, hey, look, what's up? What's up, Kevin?
You're going to name him Kevin? Is that after Kevin Mitchell, Kevin Elster, like a Mets legend, or is that just a random name?
No, cows are just named Kevin to me. So every cow I just see, I just call it Kevin.
So every time I drink milk, I'm just drinking Kevin?
Pretty much. You're drinking Kevin.
All right, let's hit the outro now.